Good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to the Young Israel of Great Neck's 48th annual fundraising dinner. It is hard to believe that our shul has held this annual event continuously for more years than the average age of our membership. Of course, this year's event is not quite like the previous years. For one thing, we're all attending this event from the comfort of our own homes. Well, except for me, of course. I'm here alone by myself in the shul. But perhaps the biggest difference is the cast of characters. In 2020, we said goodbye to our beloved rabbi and Rebbetzin learner, who after leading our shul for well over 4 decades, realized their lifetime dream of making Aliyah. The shul is now very proud and very fortunate to be under the capable leadership of the Ismachs, who hit the ground running under very trying circumstances. This year, there are stories of near-death experiences and miraculous recovery. Unfortunately, there are many of our dear friends and family that were not quite so lucky. There were those that we lost, but Baruch Hashem, so many incredible new additions to our shul families. There are stories of resilience in the face of economic hardship, and those who in the face of adversity have come through to help others with acts of chesed and generosity. For the remainder of this evening, we will recount the experiences of many of our members over the past year, since the shul reopened in the face of a pandemic that was unprecedented in our lifetime. We owe a debt of gratitude to our members on the Reopening and Medical Committee who helped navigate a safe return to our shul. As is traditional, I would like to take a moment to thank some of those who worked so hard to make our shul an ongoing success and a place of learning and tefillah despite the daily challenges that face us. I'd like to thank Nessim Tamam, our Vice President of House, and our de facto volunteer executive director, who makes sure the shul is always beautiful, functional, and efficiently run. I'd like to thank Shoshana, whose steady, unwavering dependability and attention to every detail keep our shul humming along. There are some people who are in the spotlight and those who work behind the scenes. Our rabbinic staff, Rabbi Goldberg, Rabbi Basilelli, and Rabbi Goldstein, bring Torah to our lives and help train the next generations of Jewish leadership. Our Gabayim, led by Aaron Waxpress and Charlie Goldberg, ensure our minyanim run smoothly and without interruption. Thank you to our executive board members, Kathy Gold, Mika Natanov, Abigail Weiss, Shira Schreiber, and Roya Samuels, who never miss a beat. A special thanks to our treasurer, Eli Nafisi, who will be retiring this year after 5 years of careful stewardship of our shul's finances. This evening would not have been possible without the incredible efforts of our event chair, Nina Noy, whose energy and enthusiasm make every event fun and engaging and bring our kahila closer together. Nina, along with her co-chair, Shanna Wilkenfeld, fundraising chair, Esther Morris, fundraising co-chair, Allegra Goldberg, and dinner committee members, Alana Waxpress, Michael Fuller, Robert Wellner, Stu Ashkenazi, and David Kirsch, our Vice President of Security, pulled out all the stops to make sure that this is a meaningful and successful dinner event. It almost goes without saying that Dr. Malka and Rabbi Ismach have been the key to getting through a very difficult year. Whether conducting 10 Musafim on Rosh Hashanah, treating us to a virtual Hanukkah party, helping us all cope through the on-the-couch virtual therapy sessions, or coming up with creative yet halachic solutions to complex issues of davening and religious observance, this incredible team is always there for us. On a personal note, I'd like to thank my wife, Bella, for her wise counsel and hard work behind the scenes, and her understanding and her support. Without further ado, I'd like to share with you the following program.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I just looked for David in the shul, and somehow he was not there, but I'll keep looking. As of now, I am the only live component of tonight's event. And tonight's quite an event. It's quite a milestone that we've hit. As I mentioned this past Shabbos, it's been exactly a year since we have reopened the shul, Parshas Bahaloscha, this past Shabbos, and quite a year it's been. This pandemic is far from over, and it's not necessarily going to take a short amount of time till things perfectly return to normal, but there is no question that we have turned an important corner. So many words have been used to apply and to attempt to describe this singular year. Unprecedented, difficult, trying, uncertain, stressful, isolated. None of them truly capture the word that I would like to choose for tonight to use to capture this year. And that word is community. The word community has really defined our year. You know, they say it takes a village, it takes a community to raise a child. But what does it take to create a community? What does it take, and what is its true meaning? Technically, of course, a community is the shared feeling of, fellowship with others, a result of sharing common attributes, interests, goals. The community often surrounds a location or a subject, defines itself by a group of people who gather in person or online, and they have a sense of shared purpose. We call ourselves a beis knesses, a place of gathering, literally a place of community. And that is how Jews have defined our homes of worship all these millennia. It is the center of Jewish community. We gather to daven, that's true, but we also gather to learn and to celebrate and to mourn and to help, to schmooze with, to eat with, and to support each other. We gather with our men, with our women, with our children of all ages. Why do we do that? Of course, many holy and spiritual reasons, but simply just to be together. The Beis Knesses has always been the central fixture of every Jewish location, wherever we have been. But don't take my word for it. In a few weeks, we're going to read the story of Balak, who contracts the great prophet Bilam, who has these precision-launched curses. And this targeting of the Jewish people in this precise way through cursing, the Gemara tells us, teaches us a lot about what they felt was so special about the Jewish people. The Gemara says, Amar Reb Yochanan mi birchaso shel oso rasha ata lomed mahaya belibo. From his brachos, from what ended up subsequently being the iron dome, which really flipped his curses into blessings, we learned what he meant to curse, what he meant to criticize the Jews about, what he meant to undermine. And so, of course, famously, the Gemara continues, Bikesh lomar shalo yu lahem bate kinesios. He wanted to curse that the Jewish people should no longer have their beis knesses, their places of gathering, their community centers. How do we know? Because he said, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. What had he meant to say? He had meant to undermine the very basis, the very fabric of who we are by undermining that sense and that location, that central locus of places of gathering for Jews. Was he right? I mean, was Bilam right in this assessment that that would be the best way to undermine the Jewish people? So honestly, how do we test it? The greatest way to test it, perhaps, is to, shut them down. And so we were shut down for 13 weeks entirely. And then finally, we had the ability to slowly reopen, very awkwardly, very uncertainly. We didn't really know what we were doing, so distance and outdoors and indoors and the hybrids. And it's taken a whole year. And I will say this, Humpty Dumpty is not quite back on the wall and put together again, but we're getting there. But what did we learn? And I think what we learned really cuts to the core of what Bilam, of all people, taught us. Bilam said, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. He called it an ohel. He called it a tent. And it's so interesting that you would imagine that it would be a firm thing, right? It would be a brick wall. It would be the three little pigs, and it would be an institution of seriousness and of gravity. And it's just a tent. And that's the truth. The tent, the gathering space, isn't really the point. The point is that even if the tent blows away, the fact that people have gathered there over the course of time, the fact that they have been together, that can overcome any sort of flimsy tent. And that is the secret. When we are gathered together, it's not only important because we're together and we're strong, but because those experiences together taught us what community really means. And so indeed, how goodly were those tents of Yaakov. The tent is the barest and it's the weakest of shelters. But what makes it valuable is the culture that exists within it. Because even if for a period of time, the tent is whisked away, the people who are now spread and are attempting to find their own shelter will have retained the lessons and the importance of togetherness. And even after this delicate tent, it seems, was blown away, the lessons we learned while together taught us to fend for ourselves and for each other. We learned how to care for others in need wherever we were standing. We learned how to adapt our tefillah. We learned how to adapt and reinvent our learning. And so I've been asked many times, so who's the honoree? Who's the honoree this year? Such a different dinner. It's certainly going to be quicker. And I would imagine that you're all dressed down. But the answer is, who's our honoree? This might sound corny, and I'm sorry, but you all are. The Young Yisrael of Great Neck community, they are this year's honorees. You all, who may have managed to help others from home. You who made it out through a year without shul. Some people said, shuls are never coming back. People will never return. But you did. You kept your passion burning bright enough to return when you thought it's safe and when you thought you could. You who helped with minyanim in the terrible humidity and the heat and the freezing cold and those cold November rains, indoors and outdoors with heaters and coats. You who became the de facto rabbis and youth leaders in your own home congregations, inside your living rooms, attempting to recreate what our children and our families so badly needed. You who kept positive attitudes, and in spite of the terrible anxieties that surrounded us and that we all shared, you would not let that break your spirit or, most importantly, your menschlichkeit and your treatment of others. You are our honorees. You are our Young Israel of Great Neck community, a community that I am proud to be called the rabbi of. Community is what we've been doing within this tent of ours for for almost 50 years. It's the world that, for me, defined this year, but really within this year, the word community found its true definition. I need to spend a moment of gratitude, and really, I'm pretty much done for tonight, and I think you'll love what we have coming up next. But first, a moment of gratitude and thank you. David Basalelli likely thought that he was coasting in on the tail end of a high moment in the Shul's history, a high watermark. We had the Learner Weekend and fundraising, and little did he know how difficult it would become. I wonder what that's like. He spent countless hours managing logistics, calming fears, measuring seats, and convincing me not to retire at this dinner. Just kidding. I'm going to wait till next year. Finally, and after that Hakaras Hatov, I want to say thank you to all of you. Many of you sent in your reflections and your notes and your comments of your feelings and your experiences over the past year. And what you're about to hear is a summary version of our story, your story over the past 15 months. And for all of those who we cannot include all of their material, we are sorry. We were very, very careful to try to keep this video for under 30 minutes. But I think it's something which is significant, and it's significant that we made it. It's going to serve, I hope, as a time capsule remembering times that were very difficult, times where we had to be inventive, times where our ohel, our tent was blown away, but we were able to remanufacture it wherever we are with each other. That's the story of our members, and this, what follows, is the story of our community. Thank you again to Nina Noy, whose creativity and energy made this entire night's program possible. I truly hope you enjoy. It was a whirlwind. I have to say, from those early days right after Purim, immediately after Purim, and schools began closing and everybody realized that we were up against something so much greater than we had imagined, things shut down and our whole lives changed overnight, particularly thinking about the shul. There were people in the shul who were sick, the learners were sick. We were just trying to figure out, what is a shul? What do we become in these days? And we had to figure out how to define ourselves and how we could provide what we usually do to all of the members of our community.
Early on, Meir Brahl, who is a physician, he's also an Orthodox Jew, was in group phone calls with the leaders of the Jewish communities here, the rabbis or the presidents, and very strongly pushed and got a lot of pushback to close the shuls and to stop Minyan.
There was so little known. And what was interesting is that Avi was coming at it as the president and as a physician, but he approached it with such humility. He quickly put together a committee of physicians and kept consulting with them about how to proceed, but nobody really understood any of it.
We were, as the youth department, we were on such a high from the spectacular Purim Carnival, which feels like so long ago. And basically the week later is when we got notice of like COVID and shutdown.
I still remember to this day, every day I'm always thinking about how it was when we always went to shul, how it was when I went to some of the classes that were there when I was little. I remember all the little details and I loved each one of them.
And for my husband Stan, who would come to shul every single day, it was like cutting off his legs. He literally couldn't go to shul. He didn't even know how to respond to that. He couldn't come on Shabbos. And our whole lives changed when we went out, because instead of being these smiling, enjoying people, this is what we look like.
When we were leaving America to go back to Israel in March 2020, Erev Pesach, on one of the final flights to Israel on El Al or any airline, it was probably the closest we'll ever have been to experiencing leaving Saigon. You had a real taste of what it was like for Israel to be there for you at the worst times and the best times.
Lockdown had a lot of varied effects on a lot of people. People had a lot to deal with, a lot to manage at home, kids in school. But in addition, it brought out the personality of many of us as well.
Yeah, man.
Hey Greg, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday from myself and from my beard. Ow. And they wonder why these things don't sell all year long. One of the most incredible elements of everything that went on is that in a time where people were so obsessed with themselves and their own safety and their own health, they went overwhelmingly to help and to assist and to provide chesed and initiatives for everyone else around them.
So at the beginning of the lockdown, everybody was uncertain and panicked. Nobody knew what was going to be with their jobs, with their kids going back to school, with their health, with their family members, and yet all anybody wanted to do was help other people. We put together a buddy system so that to make sure that people that really weren't going to leave their house had help and had regular groceries coming to them every week, and were able to get their pharmacy runs done. And we got so many volunteers for this. It was unbelievable.
A WhatsApp chat was set up called YIGN Helping Hand. And the purpose of the chat was to make sure that everybody's basic needs were met. So people were posting things like, I'm going on a trip to Costco. Does anybody need something at Costco?
During the lockdown, I was able to access the Chesed group that was delivering meals. Malka got me involved with that. She called me before Pesach 2020 and asked who was doing my shopping. And I said, I'm doing my shopping. And she insisted that I stop doing the shopping and she would get people. It was just so amazing. They'd come every week, and not just to deliver the food. It was a real social interaction each week where they asked about me, what was going on with me. It was my only social interaction during all that time, and it was really meaningful in so many ways.
So through the Young Israel, the Helping Hands chat, everybody was talking about, the eligibility and who could be eligible. And then when my group was able to come, Lisa Reese was submitting a lot of different options. And if you were too slow or too fast, she would actually do it for you. She was amazing.
I was desperate. All our friends were getting vaccinated. Over 65, we couldn't get appointments. And then Lisa Goldman kept posting this place, that place, this place. And holy cow, I would jump and I would miss it. And I would jump and I would miss it. And finally, we struck gold, and I got appointments, and we went, and I felt so much better. It was like, oh, what a burden off my shoulders.
Lisa must have sent everyone to every single corner of New York. I went to Westchester, my husband went to Hillcrest High School with my dad, who they were able to find parking somehow, which was ridiculous there. My mom went to a random church in Brooklyn. She seemed to have connections with every site, and she was able to really help her entire community.
The sense of community was overwhelming. It was really amazing to watch.
We soon realized that we were without our most important means of communication. We no longer had the pulpit on Shabbos morning. We didn't have the president's announcement, so the rabbi's announcement. So we had to figure out home shuling. We had to figure out a daily digest, some way for everybody to be able to get the messages that the shul was trying to deliver. So what had to be created was, I guess, essentially a virtual shul. And in the beginning, a lot of it was kind of throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what stuck. And some things were great, and some things, sort of fizzled. And one of the new innovations, not only ours, but everywhere, were the drive-thrus. Now, usually we're all together in the same place at the same time. There, for a drive-thru, we're all together in the same place, but one after the other. Because we had so few people in person, so even Divrei Torah had to change. And so we started typing up drushos, and we put the entire Shavuos in text in a book along with the Great Next Synagogue. Some of these initiatives worked really well, and I think people benefited a lot.
Usually when we have a fragmentary manuscript, and we know this because about 1/3 of them are Bible books.
We are talking tonight about a Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and a Yom Noraim that we've never seen before.
And if I remember that, I'm surrounded by family who loves me, and I'm feeling connected, and I'm feeling safe.
He looked down at his notes, some scribblings on an index card, then back to the pews.
One of the things I really appreciated that the Shul offered, and Rabbi Ismach in particular offered, were the shiurim that he did leading up to Pesach 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. Those shiurim, were they weekly or multiple times a week? I had my Haggadah open for all of them. My Haggadah is filled every margin with notes based on what he spoke about.
We also we continued learning throughout the year, even outdoors. Never missed a shiur.
I enjoyed the Zooms, especially on the couch with Rabbi Ismach and Malka. And it's very informal and just makes you feel that you're part of their group.
Rabbi Ismach's class, which I've been going to on Monday night for years here in the shul, went Zoom. And it was an adjustment because it's almost like sitting in front of a TV, and you're sitting in front of the TV at night and it's easy to fall asleep. So you have to set yourself up so that you can't fall asleep. But it was great. It was great. It kept me going, feeling good about learning the whole time.
One of the hallmarks of Shul is our social programming, and that's always a lot of fun and brings everybody together. And that was super challenging this year. And so we had to think out of the box, and our committees made some really, really wonderful events, from bingo nights to comedy nights.
It's socially acceptable not to go to Shul. I've been saying this for a long time. I don't want to brag, but I was ahead of the curve before there was a curve to flatten.
To cooking and baking and cocktail making, it was really a lot of fun, and we all were the beneficiaries of their hard work.
David Ben-Gurion from today, Boker.
Ben-Gurion lived in Sde Boker in the Negev.
Menachem Begin, Yerushalayim. Oh, that's cold.
And lived in Sde Boker.
David Ben-Gurion, Sde Boker.
Look at Xerox in the desert. Jingle bells, come to Xerox.
Yo, my bro, where does the water flow? The freshwater lake is low. To swimming in, visitors do go. Ain't above the sea level, you is below.
Welcome to the restaurant, Tel Aviv. We're over here. What do you want? You want shakshuka? We got the shakshuka right here. I make it for you right here. Yes, we make the shakshuka very quickly, very good.
So keep learning from your Torah and pray from your Sidurika. We hope to see you Sunika. Close and many and smiling. Have a happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. So when we got word that we were going to be able to reopen, we knew how challenging that was going to be. Like, what was that going to feel like? Would people be comfortable coming back? How were we going to make sure that everybody would be made to be comfortable? One of the challenges of reopening was something brand new, sign-ups and all of these crazy things. Thank you to Eitan Walls for working so hard with that, starting outside in the sun, and then finally inside somewhat, and then outside with a tent. And then when it got cold, so it was difficult to be out in the tent, we had a hybrid where some people were inside and some people were outside. And then we had a plastic wrap on the door in the back with a hole in the middle. Things got absurd, but at the same time, the tolerance that everybody had for each other and their needs was really beautiful and remarkable, and something we should be proud of.
There were simple things that we had to figure out, like how do we establish social distancing? Do we only allow certain people to come in? Do we put tape on all the seats? So eventually, we came up with some procedures, and Nesem Tamam was very, very critical in that role.
How many minyanim had to be juggled for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and Rabbi Yismach, as a Baal Tefillah, was knocking it out of the park, but exhausting himself.
A particularly difficult challenge was Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We had our largest groups who were interested in coming back to Shul for the very first time after months and months of not having been around, who were expecting a comfortable environment that they felt was safe. And at the same time, we didn't have the space with the spacing, and we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance.
But the time we spent sitting outside, near people, close enough, you can look into people's eyes over the mask. You could speak in a few hushed tones. It was really a lifeline. It was a connection.
Of the most enjoyable parts of our smachot is celebrating with people, and that was impossible. And so people had to really think on the fly of how to create an environment for a simcha, how to have a bris milah in their backyard or on their porch or in their house, maybe people looking inside from the window, and weddings in Stepping Stone Park and in venues that you would have never imagined these things.
We had a bar mitzvah during the pandemic, which was a big challenge. We were very stressed out about it. At the end of the day, we felt like we had a simcha, and I think that's because, Rabbi Yismach created this bar mitzvah banter, which helped us feel connected. People got to know Gavi.
So as a shul, of course, we celebrate a lot of simachot together. Unfortunately, we also have some sad times together.
So it was the night of our first program, our first online at 9 program. We had a series until Pesach, and Talia Reese did some comedy, and she was done. It was wonderful. It was great. She did a great job. And an hour later, I got a phone call that my father was having trouble, and then, as you probably figured out, that was the night my father passed. And there are a couple of things that hit me right away. Number one, I was going to be the first in the community under these new rules, under lockdown, who was not going to be able to have a shiva. I wasn't even able to be with my siblings. And on the one hand, I saw this, of course, as a tremendous challenge for myself. Like, how do you do this? But at the same time, I realized this might become the new normal. And so the next morning, I wrote something to the shul that about what we could do when we can't be there. And honestly, everybody took me up on it. And with calls and emails, everybody was wonderful. And I was the first, but it clearly was not the last.
When I started sitting shiva for my father, it was pretty much at the beginning of COVID, and it was an incredibly difficult time, obviously, and I'm sure it is without COVID, but with COVID, the shul and the community went above and beyond, bringing heaters and coming in jackets and offering to bring tea. I mean, it was just heartfelt and incredibly appreciated.
And one of the most important roles of the shul is maintaining Shiva Minyanim, seeing to the needs of the Avelim, And this was a very, very challenging year when it came to that. We had lower attendance, of course, as a result of COVID, but there were times when we had to maintain multiple minyanim. We had to make sure that our avelim had minyanim at their homes, and we still maintained our davening at the shul. And people really stepped up. People who normally had not, attended daily minyanim were all of a sudden on tap, and they were available, and they came, and they made sure that the minyanim were there and that avelim were taken care of. And it was really a great sense of achdut. And I really want to thank the Kehila for everyone who came through and made sure we had all this minyanim well attended.
It's incredible how the shul is able to come together during normal circumstances, and with COVID taking away so much of our ability to get together, we still somehow were able to be there for each other that much more.
But after everything, we know that the secret sauce of the Young Israel of Grey Neck is the youth department. It's what brings husbands and wives, parents and children, everybody together to shul for Shabbos.
Once the lockdown happened, we had to come up with ideas. So what we decided to do is, instead of the kids coming to us, we're going to bring the youth department to them. We make a weekly newsletter. We have over 27 copies. Everybody comes, they pick up the newsletter. We get rid of over 60 pounds of candy every single Friday. We decided to do a weekly kahoot. We did over 70 kahoots since the beginning of the pandemic. We decided we had over 130 events on the computer or drive-bys by our house. Since March 2020, we counted, we have over 130 events just to bring the youth department to the kids.
The plan was to reopen the teen meeting with the parents in order to sort of supervise the teens to avoid social distancing issues. But what ended up happening was many parents joined the minyan, and it created a beautiful atmosphere of parents and children praying, davening together. And this improved the davening for the teens, and I personally think it also improved the davening for the entire family.
So we had a few of the Friday Oneg Shabbat, we had Sunday Fun Day, we had Drop Off, where every Friday we'd go and visit the kids, we had Kahoot games, we had, what else? We had drive-ins, drive-through, drive-ins. We had all kind of race and games and all kind of fun activities on Zoom, through Zoom.
So obviously Purim is the biggest time of year for any youth department. So going with our theme of bringing it to the kids, we actually had to really come up with an amazing idea. We decided to get a float. We went around the entire neighborhood, whoever signed up.
First of all, the Purim parade, they loved, and they thought it was great, and the prizes and everything that got thrown out. And then I believe there was also like stunts and clowns and things at the youth director's house. So they also enjoyed going there, and they kind of got to see their friends.
We got to see the kids, the smiles. We haven't seen them in almost a year in 3 dimensions. Like it was always 2 dimensions on the computer. It was an amazing, amazing event. And then of course, to top it all off, our annual party at our house. So we had acrobats, we had clowns, we had people on stilts. We gave out churros, we gave out mishlach manot, gifts, swags, whatever we could think of. And it was amazing to see all the kids and how many. We had over 100 families come by our house on Purim Day.
My daughter Riva is a group leader, and my son Ezra is 7, and he attends groups. And what's interesting is that before Shul shut down, he wasn't such a big fan of groups. He liked to go to Shul, but he didn't love groups. And then he was kept from Shul for such a long time, he really grew to miss it. And when he found out that his way back into Shul was by attending groups, and that was the only way to do it, and it was with certain restrictions like masks and for a limited amount of time, he said, I want to do it. And now he looks forward to groups because that's his in to Shul.
I was so impressed by Rabbi Nisan, Bracha, Mor Monica, Mor Naz, Rabbi Ismach, Malka, and how they were just able to like switch gears and figure out online programming, Kahoots, amazing like full community events with GNS and other shuls, Parsha candy, graduation gifts, It was just like they were constantly reinventing new ideas of ways to still stay connected and stay engaged.
So also we feel very, very grateful for all of the stuff Young Israel has done with us. Like what you already said, like the float and the dancing and everything and the chauffeur, and it's really been meaningful to us.
So we're starting to get back to normal, and it's a very exciting time for me, for all of us at the youth department personally, seeing the kids, and when a kid tells you, do you remember me? I almost have tears in my eyes. Yes, I remember you. I wasn't there for a year, and I remember you. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My takeaway was that as Jews, as Zionists, we always took it for granted that we can come and go to Israel as we please. Vacation, to see loved ones, to stay in our apartment, whatever it might be. We couldn't do that this year. Even citizens at times had a hard time getting in. And we all have to think about that in terms of our future as believing and practicing Jews, what it means to be a believing Jew, where you do it, as well as how you do it.
The shutdown was a terrible thing, and it affected many people in very bad ways. But this shul was really such a bright spot for me, and I think for many other people. I don't know how Rabbi Esmach was able to handle 5, 6 minyanim at a time, running back and forth and giving drushes, and but somehow he did. We had high holidays that were really quick.
Before the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, the way our shul takes care of each other, the way it encourages community, it's unbelievable.
And now we're back in live, and we could not be happier to see everybody in groups. Yes, we have to wear masks. Yes, you know, it's a little bit different. We have to sign up. But it's amazing to see that every single week, no matter how many slots we put up for groups, it's packed every single week, and we cannot wait to see everybody here for any event. And we're looking forward to next year.
I think that the shul leadership, they did an extraordinary job of keeping people connected during a time where people were very, very isolated.
So looking forward to my next year at Young Israel, I'm very excited to have everything open again. I'm excited to see people's faces again. I'm very excited to see our minyanim full again. Really, there's just a tremendous sense of back to normalcy.
After all this, I can't say that this was the year that I expected as my first year. I certainly don't think that I was prepared properly for a pandemic, but I have to say, watching the leadership of the learners over the course of so many years brought me to this moment, and I think brought us all to this moment. And the way we were able to come together and the way we were all able to respond speaks volumes to what they created and what we've become, and hopefully in the future, what we will be going forward. I have to say that being the only live person is more challenging than I thought it would be. Once again, thank you to Nina for having created that and being able to retell our story so expertly. And the program is going to end with another poignant retelling of our story through a medium that is not us speaking, but you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Nobody really has seen this other than myself and Nina, and it's really, truly beautiful. But before I conclude and press play, we have to end with a l'chaim. The whole dinner was a l'chaim dinner, and l'chaim means something now that I'm not sure that it has ever meant before. And it's true, we missed kiddushes this year, and unfortunately, we missed kaddishes this year. But at the same time, we learned so much about ourselves and so much about each other. And as I said before, so much about community. And so I raised my cup, not a particularly elegant one, but it's all I have in my office here, to the young Israel of Great Neck, community, to our long history, to our performance of the course of our very recent history, and most importantly, to our future. L'chaim, may we be blessed with Chaim, with life, with health, with nachas, with serenity, and may our losses during this difficult time be made more meaningful by the lessons that we have retained. Have a good night. L'chaim.
בין תרומה לתצווה, יום הולדת קצת משונה, הכל רגיל כאן לכאורה, במה קל ואהבה, בין תצווה לכי תישא, אסתר פורים משתה שמחה, מי יחנה ומי יישא, ומי יישא בתוצאה, בין כי תישא לבי יקל, עולם מפסיק להתקהל, להשתתק, להסתגר, ישמעאל אדום וישראל, בין ויקל לפקודה, אין איש בעיר ובשדה, כבר אין מול מי להתנהל, מגדל בבל שוב מתבלבל. ומה אתה רוצה שנבין מזה? איך מתרחקים ומתקרבים בכאב הזה? רוצה לחיות אותך ולא להיות לבד. ומה אתה רוצה שנלמד מזה? ואיך נדע להתאחד בפירוד הזה? עד שניתן לך כתר מלוכה, כתר מלוכה. בין פקודה לויקרא, כולנו באותה סירה, אביב הגיע פסח בא, ואיתו תקווה רבה, שתקרא את רוע הגזרה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, כבר אין לנו כוחות יותר להתמודד, להילחם. מה אתה רוצה שנבין מזה? איך מתרחקים ומתקרבים בכאב הזה? רוצה לחיות אותך ולא להיות לבד. ומה אתה רוצה שנלמד מזה? ואיך נדע להתאחד בפירוד הזה? עד שניתן לך כתר מלוכה. מה אתה רוצה שנבין מזה? איך מתרחקים ומתקרבים בכאב הזה? רוצה לחיות אותך ולא להיות לבד. ומה אתה רוצה שנלמד מזה? ואיך נדע להתאחד בפירוד הזה? עד שניתן לך כתר מלוכה, כתר מלוכה. אתה רוצה שנבין מזה? איך מתנתקים ומתחברים אל הלב הזה? רוצה לחיות אותך ולא להיות לבד. ומה אתה רוצה שנלמד מזה? ואיך נדע להתאחד בפירוד הזה? שמע ישראל השם אחד ושמו אחד. נפל פור זה הגורל, אומרים זה זמן שמסוגל לנצח המזל.
נפשי, אוי נפשי, חומדו בצל ידך. Oy lodas, oy 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 lodas, oy lodas, kol rosoy decho.
נפשי, נפשי חמדה, חמדה בצל ידך. אוי לדעת, אוי לדעת, אוי לדעת כל רסודך.
נפשי זרוי